Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back, writers, to your favorite podcast all about writing. That over there is Karissa Harlow, aka Catherine, her dark alter ego, aka Lewis, my love and writing rival comrade, whatever the original Lewis Tolkien relationship was, somewhere in the middle. I'm Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien. We're so glad to have you here, and I am so glad that I have such a patient co-host because at first I pushed recording 10 minutes because I was outside watering, and I was like, dang it, I didn't give myself enough time. I'm not going to be finished in time. And then I came in, and my husband is he believes that he's actively dying. I believe he has a muscle spasm. I did ask him in advance if he needed anything, and he said no. But then as I sat down and was like, hi, Karissa, sorry that I'm late, he was like, wait a minute. And then we spent the next 20 minutes of figuring things out for him. So thank you, Karissa, as always. I feel like every episode opens with me being like, Karissa, thank you so much.
No problem. It's fine.
I'm so sorry.
It's like Ash has her headphones on and I can hear in the background. I can't see anything, but I can hear in the background everything that's going on. And I'm like, I feel like I should say something, but no one can hear me. So
it was pretty entertaining. This whole experience has made me think, gee, I'm glad women are the ones that give birth. Javi is convinced I've never had a muscle spasm like this before. Have you ever had one where you get a spasm on the side of your neck and you cannot turn your head and it's excruciating if you try? Yeah. See, I've had them multiple times. They're not that uncommon, but I guess it's the first time he's ever had one. And he's just in shock at how much pain it is. I know. And he's convinced I've never experienced one before. And I have. I told him the last time I got one, I didn't have someone to cater to my needs. I was putting away Tupperware.
I was gonna say, I'm always alone.
Exactly. I put away Tupperware. It seized up my neck and I fell backwards onto the kitchen floor and I just laid there and was like, okay.
I guess this is where I'm going to be for the next couple minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, God, it's too funny. Anyways, I mean, it's not funny, but it is kind of funny. Because men are so entertaining when they are sick or injured. And it's not that I don't feel bad, I do, but also like
he was laughing through the pain. And I was like, I feel like, you know how when other people laugh, you kind of start to laugh too, even if it's not funny.
Yes, like, that was earlier.
Gosh, I look like a psychopath right now.
Yeah, earlier he started laughing and I was laughing. And he's like, why are you laughing? And I'm like, because you're laughing, dude.
I can't help it. It's contagious. It's like yawning.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so he looks real pitiful right now. He has also had almost no water in probably days and has drank copiously over the last week. So I feel like all of that really contributes to your poor muscles being like real dehydrated.
You know,
I mean, I don't feel like that. I know that that's true.
Right. It could be, though. Of all the things I don't understand about the world, the struggle that human beings have to consume a proper amount of water is at the top of the list. Like, I understand if you don't have water, you know, people in the world don't have water, but if you have water, I don't understand why it's so hard to drink it. Because I had a friend in high school. I know. I had a friend in high school who's like, I don't drink water. I'm like, obviously you do. Otherwise you'd be dead. And she's like, well, I have to put in like, you know, the water supplements or whatever you put in water to make it taste like something.
Yes, Javi does too.
And she's like, that's the only way I can drink it. I'm like, that sounds disgusting. Don't you ever just want water? She's like, no. And I have been baffled ever since. I just don't understand.
One of the first things I ever knew about you was your water obsession. Like as soon as like we became roommates, I was like, oh, wow. She doesn't just like drink water. Like it's almost all she drinks exclusively. Maybe like a Dr. Pepper now and then, but usually it's like copious amounts of water. And I've never related until being pregnant. And now I'm drinking on average like 16 cups of water a day. And I'm just like, God, water is amazing. I've never in my life like tasted something as good as water. I don't know.
This is so delicious.
Yeah. So, and I was gonna ASMR for everyone. I got these, I've just been drinking plain water with ice, which feels like a luxury because I've been forgetting to put ice in because I'm getting water so much. But now like real luxury, I got these peppermint watermelon sparkling waters. And I was like, this will either be so refreshing or disgusting. They're delicious. It's the best flavored water I've ever had. And I was going to ASMR for everyone was I poured into my plastic wine glass. It's nice, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
As you like laugh wickedly in the background.
I do know how to ruin a good thing. It doesn't all quite fit. Hydration. I gave Hobby
Yay.
his favorite flavor of sparkling water as well. But he has not, looks like, had any water since I initially held the mason jar, the quart-sized mason jar, up to his mouth and put the straw in his mouth. And he took a few sips.
What a child.
I know. That's the thing.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. And I asked him to watch a video of ways that he can support me when I'm in labor, and he was like, I'm not doing that. And I'm like, you are. You absolutely are.
That's happening one way or the other.
100%.
Oh no.
Oh God. Anyways, it kills me. How has your week been, Karissa? What a wild 20 minutes we've had.
Yeah. I mostly was just what is it called? A voyeur. I was just watching. But, my week was good. I had my job interview yesterday, and I think it went well. I was over prepared, because I was just talking to the HR person and not like the actual editing team. So I'm like, well, they didn't ask any of like the editing related questions. It was just like, what's your experience kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was basically just like my resume and the cover letter in verbal form. So, which is fine. Yeah. But I'm like, I don't feel like I actually got to say any of the greatest things about myself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. You're like, listen, there's a lot to love about me. We're going to have to come back around to this.
I have some great things to say. But it just wasn't like that. So, and gosh, I don't understand why this happens, but my phone does a stupid thing where every once in a while it will just go immediately to voicemail, even though I don't tell it to. So I'm sitting waiting for the phone call, and it goes to voicemail, and it's like missed call. And I'm like, excuse me. So I had to quickly look up her phone number and call. And then I had to pronounce her name into the phone to get the extension, and she has just kind of a name where it can go one of two ways, and I picked the wrong one, so I had to do it again. And then she answered, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, my phone had a technical difficulty. She's like, that's totally okay, I heard it go directly to voicemail, so I knew it was probably something like that. And I was like, I don't want that to affect anything, and I'm sure it won't, because it was fine. I called back within 30 seconds, but that's just a fun, stressful way to start it, and then it was easy from there. So
well, it's only up from there.
Yeah, that's true, exactly. But yeah, I think it went well, so we'll see. I probably won't hear back for a couple weeks.
I hate that. I hate the waiting period, but of course you're familiar with it.
I am.
Yeah.
It's my whole life.
Yeah, same.
That's all I've been doing.
Same. I looked at this job that was like, you have to be comfortable with loads of rejection, basically making a bunch of calls and getting rejected. And I was like, absolutely, that is my skill set. Thank you.
That's what I can do. Thanks. I'm just a professional rejectee. So.
Yeah. Professional at being rejected.
Yeah, that's what I do.
That's too funny.
Yeah. So that's about it. That was the most exciting thing. So
that is exciting. Yeah. The dogs are good. Nothing crazy.
Dogs are good. Something. What happened the other day? They probably did something funny, and I've already forgotten. But Luna is like a little mountain goat, so she can climb anything, and then she pounces, and
that is so
really
cute.
far and really high. And Aurora is like a slinky, so we had, you try to pick her up, and she turns into a liquid and just goes everywhere. So we had to buy them new harnesses and leashes because they keep chewing them. So instead of purple and orange, they're now going to be red and blue. So
yeah, that's adorable.
It's good either way. But
that's precious. I love your dogs, and I haven't met them. They just seem like the sweetest.
They're cute. I mean, Aurora nibbles at things. So. And Luna has decided that she likes to chew on the TV remotes, and I don't know where this came from. But she just tries to steal them now all the time.
Great.
So have I told you guys this? So if anyone watched the TV show Leverage, there's a thief in the show named Parker. And so we call Luna Parker because she just steals stuff all the time. She steals towels and laundry and the TV remote and toys from Aurora. And I had a bookmark on the floor the other day, and she stole that. And I'm like, Luna, Parker, come here.
Ruby steals stuff, she'll steal anything, but her favorite things to steal are paper products, paper towels, tissues. Used is better, but she'll go through a whole box of unused ones too if you don't catch her. It's infuriating. And then she will eat them and she will poop out enormous just amounts of paper. And it is so stressful. I'm like, you are gonna get like a bowel obstruction or something from all of the paper. It's horrible. And she like will not give it back. Like other things you steal, she's like, fine, I wasn't that attached. Paper product in her mouth, and she's like, good luck getting my teeth open.
This is the love of my life. I'm not giving it back.
Exactly. It's infuriating.
Yeah, the puppies like to get mail. So they like to chew on the mail, and then we just have to watch them and take it away when it starts to like get soggy and tear. So
that's adorable. That's funny. Yeah, sometimes I give Ruby pieces of mail I'm gonna throw away. Well, I've had to stop because there were paper scraps all over my floor all the time. Right. But when she was littler, just to like keep her entertained so I could get anything done, I would just be like, here, have a piece of mail.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, how was your week aside from last minute hobby muscle spasms?
It's been good. Javi starts his new job soon, so that's really exciting. Which means that he will get to actually not work from home, but he will get to be like stationed at home and commute to work like a normal person, which is thrilling because for most of our relationship, he has been away on missions. Right. So that's thrilling, especially because I'm pregnant, and it means that like today he brought me Taco Bell for lunch and it was awesome.
Yes.
So yeah, so that's exciting. And of course, now I can help him out if he has a muscle spasm that he thinks is killing him, you know, because like now we're in the same house. Exactly. It's great. It's like, this is what marriage was designed for.
Yeah. Like, that's the point. So
it's cool. Like the whole point. Yeah, we're finally getting to enjoy it several years in.
Yeah, nice.
And we got some new chicks, so that's good. We got 10, 8 survived, so that sounds about average. 2 of them were sick. One of them, well, they both had the wobbles. That's what I call it. I forget, there's a name for it. It's this like little like chick disease that some of them get. Or I forget. It's either that or it's like a little disorder that they're born with. And I think that they can grow out of it, but they usually don't. Yeah. So anyways, I call it the wobbles. I don't remember what it's actually called, but 2 of them had the wobbles and they didn't make it. But the other 8 are beautiful and happy little chicks, and we finished the chicken run, so the big chickens are just happy as hell and they are just out in the chicken run all the time. So that's nice. And we got new water hoses for the gardens, which doesn't sound that exciting until I explain that now, because we got a 150-foot water hose, I don't have to fill up enormous watering cans and carry them around the entire property.
That's what you were doing before?
Yes, because I had a 100-foot hose in one spot and I had a 50-foot hose in another spot. And then I had a 150-foot hose, but it was attached to the sprinkler. So I couldn't really use it. I had to leave it attached to the sprinkler. So depending on where I was filling up the watering cans, because we have different garden spots around the property, I would have to carry these 2 watering cans full of water between 50 and like 200 feet multiple times, like multiple trips of that.
You gotta water a lot.
Yeah. So I'm just really excited about these new water hoses. I got to use them today and it was like took me a fraction of the time to water everything. Nice. So that's nice. And then I used the crock pot today. I threw a pork loin roast. I can't say that. I have a really hard time saying pork loin roast, which does not sound appealing, but it is. I threw it in the crock pot with a bunch of veggies that were about to go bad, and we're gonna see what happens.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm not an expert.
Leftovers or
that's
whatever.
Kind of what I do. Yeah. My crock pot cooking is not like amazing. It's not like my, some people are like amazing with the crock pot. It's my last resort. It's like if I'm not going to be able to make dinner or I have a bunch of stuff I have to do something with. Yeah. So it all goes in the same place. I'm like Huckleberry Finn. I'm like, it all goes to the same place anyways. You just eat it all together. I was one of those disgusting kids at lunch who was like mashed potatoes, clementines, chicken nuggets, bread, like everything in one, thing. Delicious.
I was the kid that separated everything out so that it didn't touch ever. And if it did touch, I wouldn't eat it.
This makes so much sense for our personalities still.
Yeah. There's so many great analogies to use to describe the differences between us.
It's so true. Oh God, that's too funny. Anyways, but I think that's pretty much been my week. Caleb's actually in Arizona right now seeing CJ, and then my mom is in Colorado for work, so it's just Javi and I here, which will be what it is when the baby comes. So that's great. But minus training. The babies, so yeah, training. I would be like, we can chill and relax, except that We can't because it's the work week. I have plenty of work to do. Also have all of the normal farm chores to do. Javi has job stuff to do and army stuff to do. And then I want to go on like a weekend trip or like a vacation. Well, I'd like to go on both before the baby comes. But it's difficult because Javi's always has to be away from home. So of course he wants to be home when he's home.
Right.
I work from home exclusively at home work most of the time that I am here. So it's not as relaxing for me to be here.
Right. Fair.
But I don't want to be around people either. I'm not like I want to go out and hit the town. No. I want to go to a different isolated location to relax.
Yes. Staycation or whatever those are called.
Exactly. I just want to go have a staycation somewhere else where there aren't any chores that I can do because I have no self-control and will do the chores anyways. But yeah, so I guess that's pretty much been my week. Eating lots of sour candies per usual. Lots of sour stuff. Javi had the idea to peel a lime, cut it in slices, dip it in chamoy, and then he's going to do something else. I forget, but it would be so sour and delicious. And now my mouth is watering.
Mine is too. That doesn't sound good to me, but it's still making my mouth water.
Just because it's did it happen to any of you guys listening? Were you just like, wow, that sounds sour and your mouth is watering?
Verbal, not ASMR. I don't know. Sensory.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, sensory something.
Experience.
I don't know. Manipulation.
Yeah. Sensory manipulation.
Did it work? So powerful. Anyways, that's pretty much been my week. Nothing too exciting over here. But cool. Do you have any book recs?
I do. I'm finally reading a little bit again. So I think I only read one book. What else did I read? I don't know. I read The Professor by Charlotte Bronte. And I really love the Brontes. I don't know if I've ever said this, but I love them a lot.
I also love Brontes.
I can't pick a favorite because I love all of them for different reasons. And The Professor is like one of the lesser known ones. And like I sort of get it. First of all, she also wrote Villette, which I have like a fun fancy box set from Barnes & Noble, and Villette is one of them in there.
Nice.
And the storylines are very similar. But Villette is told from the female perspective, and The Professor is told from the male perspective, which was kind of interesting. And they are different. Light spoiler: The Professor has a much happier ending than Villette. So if anyone is like, scared of the normal Bronte ending, The Professor is a good one. And it was fun. I liked it. It's very narrative, if that makes any sense. Like, there's not necessarily a lot that happens, but it's like very beautifully written, I would think.
Interesting.
So yeah, but I'd recommend it if you're looking for like a different classic that, hasn't been done 1,000 times.
I'm trying to remember which Bronte sister wrote Jane Eyre.
Charlotte. Yeah.
That was Charlotte. That's what I thought. Jane Eyre is my favorite Bronte sister book that I've read. I think I've read Wuthering Heights, and then there's one more. The
Tenant
something
of
Hall. Yes, the Tenant of Wildfell Hall. Yes,
that's
in order I preferred.
Really,
I liked Jane Eyre, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and then
Wuthering Heights.
And Wuthering Heights was very stressful to me. I did not enjoy it. It was amazingly
it's a tragedy.
Well written. Yeah. But oh my God, it was stressful start to finish. Oh my goodness. And Jane Eyre was just compelling.
Yeah, it's good.
So compelling. And Tenant of Wildfell Hall was good too.
But the Tenant of Wildfell Hall, I don't know if you'll see this, but Helen, I have never related to a character so much. I was like, this is me. Every decision she makes is the decision I would make in that circumstance.
That's hilarious.
I need to read it again. My favorite. Yeah,
that's funny. I need to read it again and just picture her as you. That's always fun to do.
Yeah, totally.
That's funny. As far as book recs, I finally finished. Oh my God, did I just forget the name of the first book? The series that I'm reading. Yes, Renegades. I suddenly it's Renegades. No, it's not. It is. Renegades is the first book in the series. It's by Marissa Meyer, and Karissa gave me the trilogy box set for Christmas. And so I am on Arch Enemies now, which is the second book in the series, and I'm very much enjoying it. And I was shocked by how like swiftly we moved from like one book to another, and like the way the first book ended shocked me to my core. And there were absolutely hints, and I should have expected this twist. And I was like, wait. And I had to go back and read it like everything 3 times. Yeah, I was like, oh my God. Everything is different than I thought it was. There's a cat walking underneath my microphone. There is not room for you here.
No room at the inn. Run
There's
away.
no room at the end. She's trying to like make room on my lap. There's a cat tail or just appearing in and out of screen. Anyways, yeah, so there's my book rack. What about our word of the week?
All right. Our word of the week. I practiced this. Hopefully I will say it right. Concatenation. 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 And this is a series of interconnected or interdependent things, a chain of events or phenomena, and the act of linking things together in a series.
Concatenation.
Oh, concatenation. Yep.
Incatenation. Living in the cat nation. Yes. Incatenation. I'm trying to think of how you would use that. The incatenation of events created the storyline.
It's concatenation.
Wait, concatenation.
Are you saying in? Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
It sounded the same for a couple times. I was like, what is she saying?
Concatenation.
Concatenation.
Concatenation, which means with cat nation if you want to be Spanish.
Woo!
God, I love to ruin things. Concatenation.
The concatenation of her actions caused blank. I don't know.
Caused confusion.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I feel like, the act of linking things together in a series could be like the concatenation of a book series.
Yeah, the concatenation of the Harry Potter series or something.
Yeah. Something like that. Or like if you had
concatenation. Is it 7 books?
Yeah. Or if you had a series that's like the same world or the same story, but like a different character's point of view or something like that, because those are like a little more interdependent. Something like that.
Concatenation. You hear that, Flora? Concatenation. With cat nation. She's like, sounds ideal.
Yeah, that is the world we are trying to create.
She's like, that is I thought that was the world we lived in, but she's like purring, but in a weird way where she's like gripping my thigh with her claws and almost like shaking. Like she's like really intense about it. This is so unnecessary. Your father's over there, Flora. And he thinks you're amazing all the time and has no flaws. So why are you here? She just looked at him and then looked away. She doesn't care. It's about manipulation and domination with her. She wants me to know that she's in charge.
That's the concatenation.
Yeah.
That doesn't fit at all, but okay.
No, but I don't care. I like it anyways. I say we take that word and we make it something different. We just mess it all up.
It is weird. Like it feels like it should be concatenation.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's cat. The word cat is in it. So strange.
I love that. Oh, should we get into our theme for this episode?
Yes. Sorry.
No, you're good.
We're gonna talk about the Bechdel test. Bechdel, if anyone didn't know. I don't know how commonly known this is. I mean, do you know what it is?
I know what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like you and Marianne talked about it with Gilmore Girls once.
Yeah, I'm sure we did.
Yeah.
If you have like if you've been like in the literary world much or the entertainment world, you probably have heard of the Bechdel test. And even if you haven't, you might have heard of it. It's do you want to give the definition or do you want me to give the definition?
I have a definition. It has 3 components, right? So it's a scene in a book. It has to have at least 2 named female characters who are having a conversation about something other than a man.
Yep.
So it's kind of like a feminist test for a story.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to be super honest. I don't love the test. I don't love the Bechdel test.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself. It's supposed to illustrate like gender inequality and like kind of push people to think through like how they're writing female characters and stuff. But and I feel like maybe there was a time for that. It was created in 1985 by Alison Bechdel.
Yeah, because I was thinking like in classic literature, there's a lot more opportunity to apply the Bechdel test in a way that's like elucidating. Whereas now it would feel like gratuitous to apply it to a lot of stuff.
Yes. It's almost like you feel like you have to add stuff that doesn't fit in the book in order to pass the Bechdel test to like, I don't know, seem feminist. Because the problem is that you can have a book that fits the Bechdel test that is still kind of like sexist and offensive because of whatever they're talking about, or if it's a single scene just kind of shoehorned into a story that's otherwise really not about them. And you can also have a book that for whatever reason doesn't pass the Bechdel test, but still like treats women like human beings. So
yes,
it's like,
it's true.
I don't think it's a great test.
It's not. So yeah. It's had its uses. It still can have its uses, but I don't think it generally is. Also, we went through a huge shift where the majority of published works used to be written by men. Majority of published works are written by women now. So the Bechdel test doesn't have that much of an application. Not that women writers can't be feminist or anti-feminist or whatever themselves, because of course that's true, but it's not as much of a problem, you know?
Right. Yeah. I certainly don't feel like it is. I feel like books either, well, I don't know. I feel like there are a lot of books that are really like have really strong female characters that don't pass the Bechdel test or that do. And it's like, I guess I feel like if your book passes the Bechdel test, but that's the only evidence you have that like you're not a sexist, like it's maybe probably still a problem. Yeah.
Like, no, it's absolutely true.
I feel like the solution is ultimately to just like not be a sexist, and it'll probably be fine then.
Just ultimately see value in people as individuals, not as a result of their gender. Shock.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I don't know, when people talk about the Bechdel test, it does feel like, you know, so there are certain books. So like Lord of the Rings does not pass the Bechdel test, right? But this is because Tolkien was specifically writing for primarily a male audience, but most importantly, he wanted to write about male friendship. And he and C.S. Lewis kind of write about this a little, like C.S. Lewis talks about it in his nonfiction and how like at the time that they were writing, the idea of like intimate male friendships was really lacking, right? Like it wasn't as socially acceptable. Like women could be really close and have these conversations and everything, but men were a little more like isolationist, I guess.
Yeah.
And of course, the Inklings, right, with Lewis and Tolkien and a bunch of other people, they developed these friendships. And so Tolkien's whole point was that he wanted to have a book celebrating like how men can be really good friends and how that can promote goodwill in the rest of the world and all of this kind of stuff. So it's not even trying to make a statement on feminism at all. So it would be unfair to apply this standard. And I think the same thing could be true of something like William Golding's Lord of the Flies, right? Like he's not really trying to make a statement about femininity or women or anything. It's specifically all the characters are boys.
Yeah.
Because he's making a I mean, it probably would have added a complicating factor if there had been girls on that island that probably wouldn't have wanted to read about.
No,
but
nope.
Mostly it was like about mankind in general, and it, you know, just the way that the story unfolds. It was a bunch
of kids from a male boarding school, right? Like,
exactly. And
naturally, there's no girls in that storyline. Like, you'd have to kind of shoehorn them in. And I think that forcing female characters into a story that doesn't naturally have them there, I think that's way more sexist than just not including them in the first place. It's it's like the thing. It's a big thing. It's very popular these days. It's like when you shoehorn something like quote unquote diverse into your book because literary agents say they want to see it. I think that's offensive to people who have actual stories to tell that include diversity.
I mean, sometimes something is naturally going to come up, but I feel like it's really obvious when it's natural versus when it's like, oh
you
no,
can always tell.
Yeah, I need to add something here to look better. And it's like, if that's I don't know, if it's even on your radar that you need to make yourself look better, it's probably because you don't actually believe the thing you're saying and you just want to look better. So I don't love it.
Yeah, no, I don't love it either.
But yeah, so what else?
I'm trying to think of how the Bechdel test can still be like applied in a useful way these days.
Well, okay, so I think the one place the Bechdel test is probably pretty useful is in romances, right?
I was about to say maybe romances,
because obviously in a romance, the idea is that you want the two characters to interact and be together and everything. But I do think it would be fair to say you want to make sure that both of those characters are people outside of that relationship, because people are just more interesting when they're individuals, not just half of a pair, right? Like, you know, those couples that are like, we've been together forever and we don't have a personality outside of each other. And you're like, wow, I hate talking to you guys. I feel like I'm talking to a blob, you know, it's just, it's strange. And I mean, it's great to be close to someone you're in a romantic relationship with, but at some point you gotta like leave and have a job or have a hobby or have friends and
You have a
like,
personality, you know.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I think it would be very fair to maybe say, like, okay, you want to make sure in some sense that you're showing that really both characters, but if we want to focus on the feminine aspect, that your female character has female friends or like a sister or a daughter or someone that she's talking to about maybe like a dream that she has or some kind of struggle she's facing or whatever, just to give her some, depth.
I
But
agree.
oh, okay, good.
No, because I
But
was just thinking the Tiger's Curse series is not a straight
yeah.
romance. It's a supernatural type romance. But
Mhm.
I'm thinking, I don't know that it passes the Bechdel test most of the
Yeah,
time. And that was
I
one
don't
of
think
my
so.
problems, not in a technical sense, just in the main character's personality. But it's
Mhm.
also the main character's personality. And I don't have to like that that's the main character's personality. So
Exactly.
I don't know if that was intentional. If it was intentional, then I
Mhm.
just happen to not like that main character's personality all that much. I
Right,
still
that
love the book
happens.
though. Or if it was unintentional, then maybe I can't even say like it's a sign that the author might not be a progressive thinker because that's not necessarily true either. Like
Right.
the Bechdel test is not, you have to be so careful what you take away, I guess, based on the Bechdel test if you're going to use
Yeah.
it.
I do feel like sometimes it's just so easy to use it as a singular gauge and then base all of your opinion around like, oh, well, does it pass the test? And it's so incomplete. And here's why. So I'm going to give a
Yeah.
couple factors. We can come back to what the positives are later. But this is going to sound really strange, but what in the discussion, right? So you have two women, mostly you need them to be named, having a discussion about something other than a man. What qualifies as a man? And I don't mean that in a gender sense. I mean that in the sense of like, okay, if there is a man sitting there and he's part of the conversation, but the women are basically the ones talking, does that count? Does it pass the Bechdel test? How long does the conversation have to go on before it's considered a scene, right? Like if they
Yeah.
start talking about their their dreams for life and then inevitably end up talking about a human being that happens to be male, like
Yeah.
does that count? And the the reason that I don't think this applies really well, especially as to fantasy, is because if you have a pretty 50-50 male female cast, and especially if your villain is a man, you basically need to be talking about them or including them in conversations throughout the whole book.
Frequently. Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, if you think about like Six of Crows, I don't remember the exact
I was going
delineation
to
there.
say,
Or
all they talk about is Kaz and Six of
yeah,
Crows.
exactly. And even in Renegades, like there's a pretty good 50-50 split of male to female characters. And just like randomly in any given situation, you're likely to have like at least one man there. And like, does that disqualify it from being the Bechdel test? Do you need to shoehorn a scene in there just with only the female characters? I don't think that's great. Um, and then also, if the villain is a man, does that qualify as talking about a man? Because it's not like you're talking about it in a romantic sense or like a boss sense. It's like, here is the major conflict of the book. We have to talk about that a lot. So if it just happens that the villain is a man, and 50% of people on planet Earth are men, like that's going to come up in almost every conversation.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that kind of bothers me is that if you take a reverse Bechdel test, which would be like two men having a conversation about something that isn't a woman, I'm not going to say that never happens, but I also think that's probably on the rarer side as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I think men sit around talking about women sometimes. If they have a
Yeah.
mother or a daughter or a wife or a boss who is a female, they're going to end up
Yeah.
talking about a woman. So I just think I like the definition of what is a man, like in this situation, what qualifies there, I think is kind of blurred. Because if you're going to go by the strictest definition, I just don't know that many books even pass the test at all. Because how
No.
long does the scene have to last for it to be considered a Bechdel test scene?
Yeah.
And does it really need to be there? Or is it just the author trying to look good since
Yeah.
85? So
Yeah. Exactly. I think the
that's my spiel.
purpose of the Bechdel test is something we can still apply, but I don't know that the Bechdel test is the best gauge itself. The whole
Mm-hmm.
idea was to identify storylines where women were used more as props than as actual
Yes.
characters with individual life streams, goals, and autonomy in their own plot line or in the greater plot line of the story.
Mhm.
So there's other ways that you can try and see, hey, did I include this character, this female character, just as a prop? I don't think this very often happens. I'll say it like kind of weirdly. I think in contemporary books, there's like the hot mean girl type. I think occasionally those get thrown in just like kind of because.
Yeah.
And I guess that's somewhere where that could be happening occasionally. I just don't see this being a huge problem anymore these days. I don't read a ton of books by male authors, so I can't say how much of a problem this is. And the ones I have read, it hasn't really been a problem these days. I don't know that it would get published if it was.
Right.
But I just don't think the Bechdel test is applicable for identifying, is this woman being used as a prop? Is this character being used more as a prop or as an object than an actual person?
Yeah. And I think a lot of that problem is solved in just like the ratio of main characters that happen to be female now, right? Like if you have a female main character, your odds of more naturally passing the Bechdel test go up.
Yep.
And treating, you need to treat any main character like an individual, right? So there's just inherently more work that goes into character building there. And you do want to make sure you're, treating your background characters well in that sense too. But I mean, there are shallow background male characters too. Sometimes you just don't have the time to go over it. So you have to decide what kind of ratio you're working with.
Yeah.
But if you have a main character who happens to be a girl, I think that problem becomes less.
It does.
Less of a problem.
I almost think it's not as much of a concern because historically it's been such a reversal that I don't think anyone's really, genuinely that concerned about it. But if you're looking just like at craft wise, the quality of your writing, and you're either a female author or your main character is a girl, or there's a lot of girls in your book, what you might want to do is look at like a reverse Bechdel test. Like if you have a scene with two dudes, are they talking about something other than the main character? Because that's often the case, especially I've noticed when it's first person. And sometimes it's just because it's the main character. They are central to the plot. Of course, their actions and decisions are going to be stuff that people talks about. But if it's the only thing the dudes in your book ever talk about, I mean, that wouldn't pass a reverse Bechdel test. And it's just part of writing authentic characters and giving all of your characters a proper voice. So, I mean, that's probably, I almost feel like that's more of a concern these days in most fiction than the reverse is. But what it comes down to is regardless of your character's gender, they should all, even your background characters, be fully flushed out with their own interests, their own concerns, that are not relevant to just one person or one group of people, because that's not true of anybody.
Right. No one's life, like no group of people revolves around only one person unless it's like a cult. So.
If so, it's just bad writing. It's just it's a poorly written character. I think that's more like you could almost talk about like how to write like an authentic character then and get like better results than just trying to apply the Bechdel test, because it's not that's one tiny little piece. That was really just something to call out like old dude white authors, which was relevant in 85 when the Bechdel test came out and was like kind of groundbreaking-ish. But we've made the point and now it's not that applicable anymore.
Well, I'm thinking too.
I made someone mad by saying that, but I stand by it.
That's fair. I stand with you on it. So,
thank you.
I don't think Harry Potter ever passes the Bechdel test because Harry's the main character, and in any scene that he is not actively engaging, it's usually when he's eavesdropping, and it's usually with at least one male character. But yet, I don't think you could make any kind of argument that Harry Potter is somehow degrading to women because, like, gosh, Hermione was such a role model for so many girls.
She saved their asses in every
I
single
know.
book.
She was so competent.
She's
and then
way
you had Luna,
and
she was just like her and Ginny. Like, if you weren't really the Hermione type, you were probably a Luna or a Ginny, or could at least relate with them in some kind of way. And then of course you have McGonagall, who's badass and awesome, and Harry's mother, who of course is dead, spoiler, but like still an important character. You have Bellatrix, who's like part of the bad guys, and so gosh, like there's still some Molly Weasley, like you still have some great characters on of the female variety. So it's not like not passing the Bechdel test means that there's nothing like it's insulting, or like there's nothing going on that needs to be. So
no. I think it's just not as applicable unless you're studying classic literature.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not.
I will say, so when I was writing my Lord of the Flies remix, right, which if you guys have been here for a while, you know, I wrote like a retelling and I'm kind of working on it. I didn't do a gender bent, but I did a boys and girls on the island, right? Because Lord of the Flies is all, we already said it's all boys, but it's boys and girls in my story. And so I wanted to kind of have one scene where it was just the girls, because I feel like that's an element that isn't in the original. And so I wanted to kind of talk about it in mine.
Interesting dynamic. It's a different dynamic than the all boys dynamic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I gave them like a certain mission on the island, and it just so happens that all the girls are the ones that wanted to go and volunteer for it. So the boys are left behind, and the girls are walking through the woods and everything, or forest, whatever it's called on an island. And it was actually kind of hard. Like, it was really hard to write the scene because I'm so used to writing with like a 50-50 male-female energy kind of thing going on. And I think I prefer that. Like, if you're of the mindset, there's nothing wrong with writing for men or for women or with a primarily male cast or a primarily female cast. This is fine. But I almost feel like if you want to talk about equality is more important than like an emphasis on one or the other, right? Yes. So I just tend to enjoy books that have a pretty even 50-50 split better than books that focus one way or the other. Because I have like the female characters that are a little easier to relate to, but then I get maybe like the, you know, complementary differences of the male characters, and I enjoy being challenged and thinking through things from their point of view and everything. And so it was kind of hard to write the scene, and I had to rewrite it a couple times because my instinct was to just be like, okay, well, they'll just talk about the boys and that'll be like the solution to this problem. I'll get the boys in the scene by proxy, right? But then I did think about it, and I'm like, okay, let's see if I can do this just, you know, as it is. So I started the conversation with them talking about the boys, and then it kind of goes into other things.
Something else,
But the villains are mostly male. They're mostly
I want to say what a shock.
Mysterious.
That makes me sound sexist. But listen, historically speaking,
I know.
Okay, what a shock.
And it's not like they haven't like encountered the bad guys or anything. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, they're still talking about a man. They don't know that they are, but they are. And so I'm like, does this even count? And then I had to just decide, I don't care if it counts. It's a good scene. It's pushing the plot forward. I get like the female energy going on, and, you know, they're kind of discussing like how things are working for them in the situation they're in. And it doesn't need to follow the Bechdel test perfectly, because the Bechdel test is only one way of thinking through it. And I think we've already said this several times. Don't shoehorn things in, because that people can tell that that's not natural and that you're trying to force it, which is just insulting in a different direction. So I don't know. If you guys have ever been writing anything and you're like, well, maybe I want to try to pass the Bechdel test, because, you know, if you're like me, I think Ash does this too. I think most of your books have a pretty even 50-50 cast.
They do. Although it's always a female main character thus far.
Yeah, I mean, mostly me too, but that's fine, because I mean, if you have the other characters, I mean, no one's an island, right? So they have friends and enemies and people around them. So if you found that you're like trying to write to the Bechdel test, take the intention of the test, like Ash said. Like, the intention is to make sure that you're portraying people well, that you're giving them some depth. But if you're not matching all of it, it's fine. Like, if the characters aren't named, that's fine. Or if it, you know, they do end up talking about a man for a little bit, that's fine. Or if I don't know how to change the discussion piece, I guess you could have two women sitting alone in a room doing that. They could be doing something instead of talking. You know, like practicing, you know, training with swords or something like that. Skymaki, whatever it was last week. Sham fighting. But I wouldn't try too hard to pass it, just because, well, okay, here's another reason. Literature changes, and the way that people see literature changes. And it is possible that in like 100 years, no one will care about the Bechdel test.
Oh, very possible.
I wouldn't try to cater anything you're writing to the idea that, you know, people in the future are going to operate exactly like we do, and they're going to care about the things that we do. And I wouldn't even say, in general, this is kind of tangential, but I don't love the idea of writing today as though the only people that are ever going to read your book are people that are alive today. Like, people in the future might read it, and you want it to be accessible to them, probably, I assume. So I wouldn't bank too much on like passing the Bechdel test being like a stamp of approval throughout all time.
I agree.
So,
And I think what you said about when you include, both genders in your book, and you typically should for just like baseline realism, the differences should be complementary between the
mm,
two. So
mhm,
I think that that's also that's a way better test these days than the Bechdel test is.
yeah.
When you include both genders in your book, are you making complementary statements or complementary implications or inferences about both genders? And are you
Mm,
showing things that are maybe not so great about both genders? And I don't mean as a
yeah.
whole, like all guys are this and all girls are that, like good or bad. I mean, like this woman has a flaw here, that guy has a flaw here. Maybe it's a different flaw than the other dudes.
Mhm,
These women have this strength. This dude over here has this strength. Like you need to be complementary and also realistic for both of them. So if you're looking through
mhm,
your book and you're thinking, wow, it seems like all of the guys are assholes and all of the girls are pretty chill. That is a way better way these days, I think, to check if there might be a bit of sexism in your book.
mhm.
And vice versa, of course. If all the guys seem great and all the girls are like maybe just not so competent or they're just not that great in comparison,
Right.
a little bit maybe of sexism there. Maybe you want to see if that's something you can adjust. Not even from like a moral don't be a sexist standpoint, although don't, but just
Right.
because realism writing
Mhm,
should be a reflection of humanity. We say that a lot. Should be a reflection of the human experience, and the human experience is that no one person is all flaws or all great attributes, male or female. So that shouldn't be a reflection in your writing because it's not it's not true to life in any way, shape,
right.
or form.
Yeah. And I think too, you could probably gauge it if you find that you dread writing one or two of the characters and you're really excited to write some other characters and it seems gender split, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, everyone has kind of their favorite character to write, maybe a character or two that you're like, they're okay.
Yeah.
But if you find that like usually you're dreading writing the female characters because you find them boring or you don't like them,
Hmm.
change that. Right, you
Yep.
can give them some personality, give them some
Yep.
strengths that you can appreciate. And if you find that you're only ever excited to write your male characters, or of course in reverse, then just make sure that you're giving them the proper amount of flaws and, like you
Yeah.
said, making sure that they're real. And so how you feel about it writing is probably how people are going to feel reading it. So if you find that, you're really with any piece of your writing, if you find that you're dreading a certain part of it, it's because it needs to change. It's because it's not good enough yet.
Yeah.
So maybe take that into account too if you're trying to decide if it
Yeah.
fits.
And just talk to a dude or talk to a chick. This was something that I, with some of my past editing clients,
Mm,
there was one book that when it was funny, we were talking about how a book can be sexist, even if it passes the Bechdel test. And I was
yeah.
thinking about this one specific book that was a mess in so many ways, morally and craft wise. It was just
Mm.
maybe the biggest mess I've ever edited.
Ah,
And it was the really charming guy who, anyways, he was openly sexist to me as an editor that
yeah.
he hired as well.
Yay.
Uh, but yeah, yay, such a good time. Where was I going with this? There's just so much to break apart about that guy's book.
It passed the Bechdel test, so
Yes,
it
it
technically
did.
fits.
I think it actually did pass the Bechdel test. And it is to this day the most openly sexist thing I've ever edited. And the
Mm.
author was openly and unapologetically sexist to me and about his book on purpose. So he was like, no, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was going for. I was like,
Like, cool.
wow,
Love it.
interesting,
Not.
very interesting. So it's definitely not the only thing. And one of my biggest pieces of advice for him was every time a female character spoke, I would go, has he ever spoken to a woman ever in life
Yeah.
ever? Because like some of the
Oof.
guys' stuff, some stuff that like the dude characters would say was realistic, some of it was just bad writing, but everything that the female character said was something I'm like, never in a million years would a woman say this ever, ever.
Yeah.
And so my advice to him was go speak to a woman. Not in like not trying to be like mean, but
Yeah.
legitimately, if you're struggling to write the other gender, that is okay and normal. I really struggle to write dudes. It's why I haven't written a main character that's a dude.
Mhm.
But I want to do a split perspective book where one perspective is from a dude's perspective and one is from the chick. But I'm gonna have to do a lot more introspection, and then whatever the opposite of that is, like studying all the dudes around me,
Mhm.
with intention to try and create a character that's more realistic, because I don't want to do a bad job of it. But
Right.
just talk to people. Like if you don't
Yeah.
know how to write a chick, talk to some chicks. Like if you have questions about how they sound or what they talk about or like how their thought processes work, talk to them, observe the way that they talk, ask them direct questions. Women especially love to talk. Men might not as
Yeah.
much be natural talkers in general. I know that they typically use a lot fewer words a day than we do, but it
Yep.
doesn't mean that people don't like to be asked about themselves. Talk to dudes with intention to observe and learn about how their thoughts work, how they speak to each other, how they speak to different types of women in their lives, how do they speak to different figures in their lives. Ask them questions directly about their thought processes and why they, say certain things. Like, just talk to people. This is not a bad solution. I know it's a little
It's
uncomfortable sometimes, but
right. I mean,
I
even
can't
just
think of a
like,
better solution.
yeah, like I can't even imagine, is there an adult person that has never spoken to the opposite gender? Because like,
Yeah, I
don't you have
edited his
family
book.
members or, well, okay, him.
I have
But
to
like he's got to be
assume.
a minority, right? Because like
I
most people
know.
have family or like they went through school at both gendered
Yeah.
school, or like they had a job. I don't know. I guess you could be isolated if you just had the right mix of circumstances, but
Mhm.
gosh,
Well, this is why
that's
I'm
crazy.
saying just be intentional, because it's not like I don't talk to
Mhm.
dudes. And like Javi's in the army, so like all his friends are dudes. And so it's a lot of times when his friends were, it's just dudes. It's just a bunch of dudes
Yeah.
being dudes. And so I'm a lot more familiar with the way they speak now, but I don't often just sit there and observe them and think like really intentionally, ooh, what can I learn from this observation or this conversation that I can apply to
Mhm.
writing male characters? Now, if I
Right.
sat down like with a notebook or just like intentionally observing, I might actually get a lot of stuff I could use, and I should probably do that more before I start trying to write this dude character.
Right.
But like everything, it's about being intentional. Just because you're around women or talk to women, or you're around dudes and talk to dudes, doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting out of those interactions what you could as a writer. So if that's something you struggle with, maybe that's something that you're not doing, which isn't a bad
Mhm.
thing. That's too much effort to put into every single interaction every day. So just,
Right.
pick a few times, pick a
Yeah.
person or pick a situation where you're going to be around people of the opposite gender and or whatever gender you struggle writing, and pay attention on purpose.
Yeah. I think another potential issue with the Bechdel test is that, well, okay, stories are about conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you put two women in a conversation talking about anything, there should be some kind of conflict going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I have mixed opinions about this. I think that can lead to like the idea of a shallow female enemy, right? Where it's
Mm-hmm.
like they're just insulting each other. And I don't really, there's this whole, I'll get controversial for a second. There's this whole like women supporting women movement, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, what if I don't like that woman? What if I'm morally opposed to things she's doing? What if
Yeah.
this man is more in line with my moral perspective? Like I'm just supposed to
Mm-hmm.
support someone because they have the same like genes that I do? That's
Mm-hmm.
silly.
Yes.
So on the one hand, conflict between women is good because conflict between men and conflict between the genders is also good because it exists and you have to,
Yeah. It's
it's realistic
realistic.
and it
Yeah.
happens. But you also don't want to go too far to the point where the only way to make the Bechdel test work is to make enemies of people that wouldn't otherwise need to be enemies.
Yeah.
There's like this trope, especially in YA, where it's like the girlfriend or the ex-girlfriend of the love interest, and she's like pretty but has no personality, and so
Yeah.
like the main character and the reader feel justified in hating her, and
Yeah.
that's really an issue of a shallow character. You
It
can
is.
have a good version of that. You can have a person that is an ex-girlfriend or a girlfriend or isn't, who clashes with the main character for some other kind of reason, or another female character for any kind of
Yeah.
reason, and putting depth there, they can still have conflict. They can still end up in a conversation where they're both named and they're discussing something that isn't a man. And then you can technically pass the Bechdel test. But it is, most of the time, it's either going to be boring or it's going to create conflict, because that's how every conversation in a book should really go. And not that it should be boring, but there should be some kind of conflict going on.
Yeah.
And you can have two people kind of agreeing in a conflict against someone else, like if you're plotting an attack against the bad guy or something. But two people in a one-on-one having a conversation, it either needs to be like thematically interesting or have something to do with a conflict between the two of
Yeah.
them. I mean, you think about how love interests act together in like an enemies to lovers. There's conflict there. And that, I mean, people like that. That's good. It usually gets resolved in some kind of fashion, but there is going to be that element of conflict. So I'm not the kind of person that's going to tell you that your women have to care about all other women and that there's no line and that it's all it's girl power against men. Like, that's not how it works for me.
No.
But I would caution you against going too far with like feeling like you have to have the Bechdel test, and then the only way you can justify it is by creating conflict between two female characters that otherwise really wouldn't need to have that conflict.
Yeah.
Because adding conflict is the way to make an otherwise boring scene relevant and interesting to the story. And I would give that advice normally, but I wouldn't necessarily go with it in this situation. So
yeah, I really think the only way that I like pretty firmly stand behind the women supporting women concept is when it's applied to maybe a situation where there's women, and I think men probably do it too, but it looks different, where women have this occasionally a scarcity mindset about something, you know, like there's a hot dude, right? So they all try to make each other look bad to get the dude's attention, right? Unfortunately, that is a thing that happens. It's not a very mature thing. No, not every woman does it. It is something that occasionally happens in female circles. I don't know that much if that happens in male circles. I'm not a dude. But that's the kind of thing where typically when people address that kind of situation, you say, women supporting women, there's room for all of us, you know, or like you're working in a mostly male dominated field. And so girls get really competitive with each other. And then you say, no, come on, women supporting women, there's plenty of room for other women in this field.
Yeah, we can both be successful here.
Yeah, I think that's really more where that concept is applicable. Other than that, I agree. You don't need to just because it's a woman, like,
I just like that a lot.
Women. I'm like, it's a very strange concept to me.
Yeah, you can't just tell me that I have to support you. No, yeah, and it usually goes right. It usually goes along with like someone doing something that I disagree with, and then it's like, women have to support women. I'm like, no, we don't. Like, I'm allowed to disagree with you. It's okay.
Yeah. So. Well, and here's the other thing too. And this isn't even me saying you can't write a scene in a book where the girls are just being catty to each other and it's not women supporting women, because that's a sign of immaturity. Maybe that character is immature. Maybe you do have a character who would put down other women to make themselves look better. That's a sign of immaturity. That's a character flaw. Your character should have flaws. So it's also not, and I think people get this a little bit confused too. Your book can have sexist characters without the book being sexist, because some people are sexist, and there are very, very, very many different degrees of being sexist. Everyone's probably a little bit sexist. Some people are super sexist. Looking at you, guy whose book I edited, extraordinarily sexist man. And
I
also
see
racist and some other things.
Oh no,
I see him for sure. He was all of the things that you're like, wow. But there are varying degrees, and that is okay for your characters to have some of that. Some of these sweet hero characters, sweet boy hero characters that we love, that, you know, shove the girl behind them when danger comes. I happen to love that. However, is there a bit of an element of sexism to that? Possibly. Kind of depends on the character and the situation. You could write it like that. Only you know you created the character. So, I mean, that's up to you. But it is okay to have a chick character who's sexist against other women. It's okay to have a dude who's sexist against women. It's okay to have chicks who are sexist against men and men who are sexist against men. It doesn't matter. That's just people. If there is an influx of one or the other like a lot of people are just sexist against one or the other group, that's a problem. That might mean you're saying something with your theme that you didn't mean to say. And it's all about being intentional. Are you trying to make a point? Because you're going to accidentally make a point if you do that. But just having a couple of flawed characters here and there that's not a problem necessarily. That's just, you know, fiction looking like the human experience, which is the way that it should. So,
yeah, I think I've been seeing it a lot in YA that's been published a lot lately, where it does feel like all of the male characters are portrayed as awful and like they're all sexist and terrible. And I'm like, this is just not my experience. Like, of all of the sexist people I've known, it's been a very, very small number. And none of them really had enough power to do anything to me. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I'm not saying that some people don't just end up in situations where it does have a lot of power over them. But it's like, that is not my experience, and I don't think that you can argue that's the majority experience for most Americans. And so I've just been seeing that pattern repeated over and over, and I don't want to blame the Bechdel test. I'm not going to say that that's why it's happening, but all of those books
might be a
pass the Bechdel
contributing
test.
factor. Yeah,
They all pass it in some way. It's like all of the females are like, we're all on each other's team. I'm like, you have completely different worldviews. How are you on the same team?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
And when
or
that
you have no reason to be friends, or it just
Mhm.
doesn't follow for some reason.
No, I agree. And I forget, there was a book I read recently where I was like, oh, every guy character is garbage. And then I thought, oh, wait, no, this is going to be a good guy character. And then he ended up being garbage too. And I was like extraordinarily disappointed. And here's the thing, like, that's kind of like what I was just a great example of what I was just talking about, where like, if you notice that all of your characters or a majority of them are against the other gender, you're saying something with your book that is either super unrealistic or that you're probably not intending to say. Because listen, I have had some horrible experiences with men in my life, and I've had mostly positive experiences with women. So I get having plenty of reasons to not trust men or necessarily like them inherently.
Right.
However, that doesn't, even I read those things and I go, what?
Because it's just too saturated in it. You're like, that's still not realistic.
Because even people who have had like 99% bad experiences with someone of the opposite gender, and that's not that many people, but even if, that's us also assuming that they don't have any positive interaction with any person of the opposite gender in any part of their life, not even like at the grocery store. Someone hasn't opened a door for them ever.
Right.
That's not true. No one is stupid. No one is blind. There are so few people who experience life that way, where even if they've been treated really badly by the opposite gender, like that they would apply that expectation to everybody of the opposite gender. It's not realistic. So again, it's a problem in your book if you're doing that, because you're creating an experience, a quote unquote human experience that is not true to life in any way, shape, or form.
It's not relatable for most people.
It's not relatable, even for people with valid trauma who have a quote unquote reason to be sexist, if you're going to say anyone does. And even those people don't relate to it. You have gone too far.
Yeah.
It's so disappointing. I was disappointed because also, even if, just go with me on this thought experiment, even if you're, for example, a chick who hates dudes, or a chick who just does not trust guys, has a lot of valid reasons to not trust guys, why in the hell would I pick up a book that's also all about a bunch of garbage men? Do I not want to see something refreshing and escape from that?
Right. Maybe why do I want that more?
Why would I want more of that? I would like to see some examples of dudes who are like chill or like good, decent people, you know? Like, why would I want to escape to the same type of bad just to get angrier? Like, that is not... I don't think that is healthy emotionally. And B, what kind of society are we trying to create? We're just trying to make people angrier at each other, and it's not realistic. So it's bad writing. So I have all kinds of problems with that. I wish I could remember that book I read recently. I was so let down. I got to the very end and I really thought that this dude character was going to come through and be chill. And then at the end, he was an asshole too. And I was like, okay, well, this book was garbage and a waste of my time. And I'm mad at the author for writing it.
That is a really good point too, that like, even if you have had primarily bad experiences with men or with women, like you're not going to want more of that. Like, if that's your life, don't you want a different experience and not to be saturated in it? I understand a lot of people are writing about like feminist themes, and that's fine, I guess. But then is someone that hates men really going to want to read about that? Like, I don't know. It's just...
No, because just like women supporting women, it just applies to the concept of women don't have to step on other women to be great, you know, to get higher up in the ladder. You don't have to knock down men to be a feminist, and you don't have to knock down women to be a strong dude. Like, you don't have to...
Why is this hard?
This is the simplest concept in the world.
I know.
I don't know why we're still struggling with it. You don't have to put someone else down to make yourself feel better on a personal way, on a larger gender scale. And this is where me and modern day feminists, I have a big problem, a really big problem with a lot of them.
This is where we part ways.
This is where we part ways. I have a problem with a lot of the diatribe that goes on around this, because I don't think that you need to say men are trash in order to say that women are great. Those are completely different concepts. And also, you can't prove either of those things are true.
True. Yeah. Sometimes people will say like, women are great. And I'm like, well, some women are.
Some women are great.
Like, I have
and some women are trash.
Yeah, I mean, some women are trash.
Yeah, and some women are also trash. And like, some men are great. Like, you can't... People are individuals. It's just the dumbest... It's just the dumbest thing in the whole world.
And that's really where the Bechdel test fails, is that it doesn't bring in the individuality of the people involved.
It doesn't account for individuality.
Yeah, if you have female characters that do need to talk about a male villain, or maybe they share a male coworker, or they have,
or maybe there's a hot dude that they want to talk about, and that's okay, because guess what? Girls do that. We do. What the hell?
Yeah,
it's okay.
It does give kind of this impression that like women aren't allowed to think about or talk about men at all. Right? Like you just, if you think he's attractive, say nothing. Or like, if he's a man, don't give him the time of day. It's like, well, he's a human being. I'm allowed to think things about him, or
I'm allowed
have things to say or want to talk.
In a male character.
Yeah.
Like, it's so weird.
That happens. And that's like when I was writing that scene in my Lord of the Flies thing, I was like, you know, some of the guys are acting awful, and some of them are really stepping up and like stopping some crazy stuff from going on.
Like,
and it's like
humans.
that would be that would be discussion worthy if you got like if you were in this situation. And I understand this is specific to my book, but just go with me here. If you're in a situation where you're kind of isolated and there are men and women, like we all know kind of the fear of what might start to go on if there was no society there. So all of the girls getting together to be like, hey, who do we trust? Like, who do we want to vote as leader?
Reasonable.
That would totally happen. Like, 100%. Do we want to be leader? Do we want to back someone that's just going to back us? Like, what do we want to do with that? Like, that is absolutely a discussion that would happen.
Yes.
So it just seems silly to say, like, you're not allowed to talk. And the Bechdel test isn't saying you're not allowed to talk about men, but it kind of gives this vibe that if you're talking about men, it's not a legitimate conversation.
That you don't like women.
Or like that. Yeah, that doesn't count as women being feminists. Like that's some kind of relic of sexism. And it's not, because men are humans. So you can talk about them.
Yes. And everyone's an individual, but I do want to also say there are some generalities between men and women that keep that, like, you know, make them more common to each other, which is why women do tend to, like, at a party, women are going to tend to like congregate in a group and talk, because they have probably more in common in some ways, and men typically have more in common in some ways. But when we get sexist about it, we're saying all men have these bad things in common, and that's just not true. And all women have all these bad things in common, and that's just not true either. So it's okay for your characters to have stuff in common because they're girls or guys, because that's also true to life, but it shouldn't be all bad things, because then you're being sexist. And the Bechdel test absolutely had a place, and has a place if you're looking at classic literature, or if you are reading something that's really sexist, you might be able to apply it. But these days it is just largely not applicable. I feel like trying to apply it to most modern writing does a lot more harm than good. Like, it just completely misses the point.
Well, and too, so like in 1985 it was created. I think when you're looking back, tests are useful, but when you're looking forward and then people are influenced by the knowledge that the test exists, that's when you get kind of problems. And so it's like, well, anything post 85 really shouldn't care about the Bechdel test, because it existed, and so people were able to
people
manipulate.
Already knew.
They were doing it on purpose. Or
it's like the diversity call is what it feels like, like that all literary agents are like calling for, because now that all of these authors know, it feels it's very hard to come across a book that I read that has like true diversity in it, that doesn't feel like it was just like shoehorned in, just like pandering. And that's a huge bummer, because then like really good stories get hidden by all of the pandering crap. And that's kind of the same, I feel like, with the Bechdel test. I agree. Like, we know what the Bechdel test is. We know what diversity looks like. Trying to follow like a specific formula to make sure you have X amount of diversity or X amount of feminism in your book is only going to come across as inauthentic and not so great. And it's not you're not gonna make a good point with your theme. You're not gonna make a point anyone hasn't already made. And isn't the whole idea to make a new point with your theme, to say something that hasn't been said? The Bechdel test has been said. Valid point. We've discussed it.
The intention of the point. Let's carry it forward, but kind of ignore the test.
The concept of diversity should be something that's included in fiction. That concept, okay, now can we branch off? In what ways? Are there ways we should avoid it? Like, in what ways make it authentic? You know, like, play with the theme. Don't just go with the same huge general theme that we've already seen.
It's like this technical test that we use, and it's like, well, the test is so shallow. Like, so many things can go wrong in that test. You have to take the intention of the test and say, like you're saying, like, well, how do we do this authentically, right? How do we make this unique? How do we really illustrate the intention of this test? And that's not as testable right? That's going to be a little more subjective. It's going to be a little more like, well, how do people feel when they read it? Did they feel like it was did the female people readers feel insulted, or did the male readers feel insulted, or did everyone kind of feel like this was really cool? And so the problem with any kind of literary test to see if your book is X is just, it's too shallow. It's not enough information. It doesn't take all of the qualities of the book into
writing
account.
Is qualitative.
Yeah, it's not math.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's not quantitative. There's not a formula you can follow. There's not a test you can run to make sure that your book passes the I'm not a sexist mark. Like,
it's more work, but you have to actually use your brain and figure out, like, am I a sexist?
And your heart.
Am I achieving what I want?
And your empathy, and talk to people, talk to your readers, and also talk to the people that you don't understand that well.
Yeah.
And if someone tells you don't understand them that well, guy who I edited for, maybe take them at their word and go talk to someone real quick.
Yeah.
Just maybe see, just test. And that's why have people read and tell you, hey, did you feel like these characters I wrote were realistic? I definitely have to do that when I write dude characters. I'm always like, does this feel realistic to you? Because I know this is not my strength, but I want to do a good job. So ask people. If you're afraid of that you're being sexist, just people will tell you. Don't worry. People will really tell you these days. So
that's true. You might even need to not take them too seriously. Like if someone says you're sexist, be like, cool, I'm going to get a couple other opinions. Like just to make sure it's not just you.
It's that don't take criticism from people you wouldn't take advice from, that kind of thing. Yeah. So know who you take advice from and go to those people. And if they have criticism, then it's probably valid. And on a related but not exactly the same note, I keep wanting to, what does that sound? Oh, it's Hobby's straw. I was like, what was that sound? I thought the cat was getting into something.
It's Hobby dying in the background. Ignore
it's Hobby dying actively in the background. He'll be fine, guys. He's a man. They're strong, Is that sexist? No,
they're strong, but pain averse. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Oh God, it's too funny. Not me being sexist about what a baby men tend to be when they're sick or in pain. It's a generality, and I stand by it.
Oh boy, do you.
Oh boy, do I. No, I feel bad for him, but I do stand by it. Anyway, so there is a play called A Dollhouse by Henrik Ibsen. It is a classic example of feminism, legitimate feminism, written by a dude. And I think A Dollhouse is an absolute masterpiece thematically. If you guys have not read it, I do recommend it because it's a play. It's not a very long read, or you could go see a performance of it. But when you see a performance of it, you do have to keep in mind that the directors tend to play with the theme a little bit. There's because the way that they present it can change it a little bit. But it's interesting because the whole concept is, for the first part of the play, we basically see, despite her being the main character, she's basically just a prop. Like she's basically just a doll in a dollhouse. And it's very specifically, some versions, some translations, because it wasn't in English originally, have it translated as a doll's house, as a possessive doll's house. That is not the title, because that actually is completely against the theme. It's a dollhouse, because it's not the doll's house. If only. If only. If only. It's a really great example of the first part of the book, or of the script, where you can see this main character is treated as a prop and even acts almost as if she's a prop in her own life. And then where she starts to like gain this autonomy, and she makes these like kind of like wild decisions, and there's like a lot of emotional turmoil. And the dude character, some of them are crappy. Her husband, though, if I remember correctly, is not even that bad of a dude. He's just like kind of a milquetoast dude, and like it's not his story, so we don't know as much about him.
But passive, if I remember
he's just kind of
correctly.
passive. Yeah, exactly. So again, so here we see a woman who goes from being used as a prop to discovering her autonomy to taking steps to, craft her own identity and choose what she wants for her life. And she's not. So Henrik Ibsen is making an amazing argument for feminism back in the day when this was not happening. And he did it without trouncing all over men and saying all men are garbage. So excellent example. The dream. Excellent example of all of the type of balance that you want. If you're going for a primary theme, and we're just saying, in any book, try to not be sexist because it's bad writing. But if your book contains themes that are specifically feminist themes, and you're going for that on purpose, and you have not read A Dollhouse by Henrik Ibsen, highly recommend you do. Just I think the most moving and accurate and authentic piece of truly feminist work I've ever read. Highly recommend. The balance was beautiful. It was perfect. So just all of my admiration for that work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
all of it. I think that brings up a good point too, for me, that I think the Bechdel test assumes that every book is trying to be feminist in some way, or that every book is trying to make a comment on gender. And you don't have to. Like, there are plenty of themes in the world that have nothing to do with gender. I mean, any kind of topic that has to do with like redemption or self-sacrifice or friendship or forgiveness or grief, like these are not gender specific. You can tackle them from a gendered point of view, but they aren't, they aren't gender specific. And so I do think sometimes people assume that to be a feminist, you have to have feminist themes in everything you write, and you don't. You can just carry the feminism in. You can just carry that in as a general way that the world works, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be, crazy. It doesn't have to be the point of the book. So here's maybe a positive about the Bechdel test. I don't know. That if you are specifically going for feminist themes, like Ibsen style, like maybe you want to check to see if you pass the Bechdel test. Maybe you want to take a couple different criteria and say, okay, am I really doing this in a way that people, agree with and think is a good gauge? But if feminism is not a theme, if you're dealing with something like grief, or you're dealing with something like, even if it's, similar but different, like racism, if that's a topic you're tackling, like it doesn't have to be about feminism. And if you're a woman, you don't have to write about feminism. I don't enjoy writing or reading about feminism.
Neither
and
do I.
Like, it's okay. Like, that doesn't mean anything. And there are men that do enjoy that. And it's maybe the Bechdel test is useful if that's what you're trying to do. But if you're not trying to do that, if it's not about feminism, if it's about something else, that's okay. Maybe you can just leave the Bechdel test with feminism and
it's just
not worry
probably
about
not
it.
as applicable. Not all like writing strategies are applicable.
Right.
Some stuff is, some stuff isn't. I was trying to think. I think in A Dollhouse, I think that there are probably several scenes that don't pass the Bechdel test, because the whole idea is kind of a before and after, like a before she discovers her autonomy, which would she as a person would not pass the Bechdel test at that point in the story. And then she gets to the point where she's like, wait, there's another way to be, and then kind of passes the test. So that's also something to consider. Like we say, you can break any rule if you're doing it on purpose. So if you're using if you're like, I kind of want to follow the Bechdel test though, but you don't have to apply it to every single scene. And I think that that's kind of more, if you're committed to trying to like pass the Bechdel test for whatever reason, and you want to shoot for like a majority of my scenes pass the Bechdel test, I think that's fine. But it's just not realistic that every single scene would, because life isn't really like that. So if you're going to break the rule, or if you're going to break the Bechdel test rule, break it on purpose for a point, be intentional about it, but it's not a hard and fast rule.
Yeah. And I even like the idea of breaking it in the sense that it doesn't have to last for the whole scene, right? Like I've had scenes where two female characters are talking about something, like, weirdly enough, they tend to just talk about women if they're not talking about men, because just like that's what a lot of people talk about. You can talk about like philosophy and concepts and dreams and stuff, but usually that's not I don't know. You can do that. That certainly fits in sometimes. But usually it just eventually comes across a man. Like if you're talking about philosophy, what are you not going to name any philosophers? Does that count? Like,
no, only the female philosophers.
Yeah, I guess. Or if you're talking about grief or family, like what no male family members are going to come up. I mean, it's just kind of silly.
We don't grieve the males. Are you
good riddance,
Oh my God.
But if you can kind of pass it for like half a page, I'm like okay with maybe that, not as a standard, but just as kind of a gauge of like, all right, do they have other things they could talk about? But don't say that like, well, it has to be like an entire chapter or an entire like between scene breaks or something, because conversations like evolve. You talk about something and then you move on to another topic. And so it's maybe like break the rule in the sense of, well, what are you qualifying as a scene, right? Is it by length? Is it by like actual scene, like in a movie, like the same location on the same day, or what are you going to qualify that as? I think there's some wiggle room there. And so, as long as the female characters are like, I don't know, they don't even really have to speak to each other. Just as long as there's personality and character there, I think they can kind of wiggle their way into passing the Bechdel test.
I agree. I think you could even say, hey, I just want to make sure that like a certain number of scenes in my book pass the Bechdel test.
Yeah.
Like you could have literally only one scene pass the Bechdel test and your book is probably still perfectly fine. I mean, it just every book is different, so it depends. Or maybe you're like, I just want like a certain percentage of my scenes to pass the Bechdel test. Ideally, be flexible about it because again, writing is not a formula. But you can set those kind of goals. I think that is so much more realistic than trying to say every scene has to pass the Bechdel test because every scene in real life doesn't pass the Bechdel test. Are you kidding me? Do you know how many conversations I have about Javi? Usually just gossiping about him. He's right over there.
It's
I don't know
true.
if you can hear me.
We talk about Javi a lot.
I'm doing it again. Yeah. Yeah, because that's just life. So I don't think anything should 100% pass the Bechdel test because then it's not realistic. But yeah, if you want to like use it as a guideline, is sure you can. Just, you know, be aware of how you're using it and why you're using it.
Yeah. And it's okay to break some of the details.
100% it is. Yeah, break the rules a little bit, you guys. We encourage that. Which is funny for Karissa too. Be and me. But even Karissa is telling you that our rule follower, Catherine Lewis over here, is telling you guys it's okay to break this rule. So
it is.
Yeah,
you should trust me when I tell you to break rules.
Seriously. Maybe not always trust me, but like I'm pretty good at breaking rules. I don't know.
It's true.
I usually get away with it, so
yeah.
Anyways, is there anything else you want to say about the Bechdel test?
I don't think so. Let me just scan my notes. Nope, we're good.
Sweet. Okay, in that case, do you have any writing updates?
I have landed on the book I want to write next. I think last week I told you guys I was like,
tell us about it. Anything about
it? Yeah, I don't know if I've mentioned it briefly. It's the one that I think I can probably do in like 50,000 words. I think I added a little bit of a subplot, so it's probably going to be more like 60 to 65. But and also I tend to underestimate the word count, so maybe like 70.
No way is it gonna be?
But I think it will be under 100,000. So we'll see, and that'll be an achievement for me. I don't think I've ever done that.
Wow. Yeah. No, I have.
So, but yeah, it takes place so it's in the same universe as that I always write in, but it takes place in the real world at like a boarding school. And the boarding school is in Ireland, mostly because I just wanted a cool location. And I know we'll see how deeply I add that culture in because I don't know a lot about it, but we'll see. And essentially like there's like a mysterious purpose behind the school, and none of the students know why they're there to get a very specific education. So that's all I'll say. But
I'm like all of my favorite tropes. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm excited.
Love that. Hell yeah.
I built a playlist to get the vibe going. I haven't actually I have like one chapter written because I'd done it a while back. So it's probably a month or so old. So I have to reread that and then get back into it. But now I'm like, I have the playlist, so I'm committed, and I have a pretty good outline of the plot and everything. And so it's either going to be very easy to write because it's on the shorter side, or it's going to be really hard to write because it's on the shorter side. So we'll see. which it turns out to be, but that is that's what I've been prepping for.
I have decided that I want to finish one of the other books that I started a while ago. I have like half of it finished. It has to be hugely I think I need to rewrite it though, because I kept hitting writer's block, which is why I quit, which means that the problem is earlier on in the book. And now it's been so long since I've written it. I think I'm just going to have to do like a full rewrite on the first half and then finish it. But it's a sci-fi and I think that it's good. And I think it has like an interesting name, which is not my usual. I usually have no idea what to title anything. So I think that that's what I'm going to work on, just to try to get back into writing mode, because it's like not as high stakes as the project I really want to work on. But it'll get me like back in the flow. But right now I'm still trying to finish my reading. I have Arch Enemies. I have I think Supernova, is that the last book in the series?
Yeah.
Supernova. So I want to finish those two at least, and then I have one more book I want to finish reading, and then I'm going to try and get back into writing. So that's exciting. And I also had, so here's the thing, was like last week I had a dream and I woke up and was like, this would be the most amazing book in the world. And I wrote it down and was like, amazing chef's kiss. But then last night I also had a dream that while I was dreaming, I remember thinking this would be the best book ever. And I woke up and was like, what the hell? What? That can't be a book. This is so stupid. So now I'm really questioning. I know, me too. But now I'm really questioning the book idea I had in a dream last week. I'm like, wait, is that one garbage too? Because I really thought it wasn't garbage, but this one I was so convinced in my dream was amazing. It is actual garbage.
Yeah. Dreams are like 10% hit, 90% miss. And
that
it's
is
so hard to
exactly
tell
correct.
which. Yeah.
It is so true. It is so, so, so true. The first book series I finished started because I had a dream. This one that I'm querying right now, I've had dreams about it, but it didn't start as a dream, I don't think.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This one, I actually think the one that I want to go back to and finish now and work on next, I actually do think it started out as a dream. But just very loosely. So
right.
I don't know. I don't know if I can trust my dream self, but I've been dreaming very vividly also, which is apparently like a pregnancy thing. So it's been like exciting, but also disgusting because you sweat a lot in your sleep when you're pregnant. Did you guys know that? I didn't. One of the many things that doctors don't tell you.
Are you sure it's not because it's getting towards summer? Or is it
No,
actually
because we keep it really cold in here at night. It's truly just a hormones thing. So I'm just like, it's horrible. So I woke up like every like hour and a half probably last night. And I was just laying there like, I'm cold, so I don't want to take off my blanket, but I'm just sweating. It's like when you have a fever, so you're cold, so you keep blankets on, but you sweat. It's like that, but all of the time at night. So not during the day, just at night when I'm trying to sleep. So I would wake up and I was like, all of my clothes were wet with sweat, like neckline of my t-shirt to like ankles of my pajama pants. Disgusting. Javi rolled over to try and like hug me and he was like, you smell like sweat. And I was like, I'm so upset.
I know.
I know I do. I feel disgusting.
I hate it more than you do.
Yeah. So then I would like dry out just in time to start sweating again. It was so gross. So anyways, that's a really fun thing that they don't tell you about, but
at least take advantage of the dreams.
I'm trying to. I'm hoping that this baby can like inspire me. The dream that I had last week. Yeah. Well, the character in my dream was pregnant. And it was like this like really like harrowing kind of dark plot line. And I was like, that sounds interesting.
Don't hate it.
I don't hate it. There is another book idea.
There we go.
That I remember telling you and Kendall about, which also came from a dream. This was years ago. And because I can't title anything, if you guys are new here, then you don't know this about me. If you're not, you've probably heard this, but I can't title anything. I'm horrible at it. So I have one book idea I started from a dream that was about a pregnancy. It's a sci-fi also. And its working title was just Pregnant with Alien Baby, which is not a
That's right. My favorite working title of all time.
Yeah. So I really am great at titles and writing apparently about pregnancy. And I have this pregnant mermaid idea I've had for a while. Like I just, I have a lot of ideas about pregnancy because long before I was pregnant, I was just like, pregnancy is fascinating to me. I know some people are really freaked out by it. I've just always thought it's so interesting. Like from just like a purely like physiological, I'm like, you're creating a human inside of you or a mermaid,
it is pretty
cool. Or maybe an alien. I just think it's interesting. I also
hopefully
think
a human.
Hopefully a human.
That's what we're expecting.
That's what I'm expecting. But I also am a bit of a conspiracy theorist. So I'm like, if the government thought that they could make people have babies in a certain way, would they? And I'm like, yes, they absolutely would. And so then my like sci-fi conspiracy brain is like, what a great plot this would be. And I do stand by that. But that cannot be my niche. That cannot be my thing where I just write random books about
various pregnancy stories.
I can't do that. It's so weird. So weird.
Gosh.
But I'm like, okay, I'm currently pregnant. At least I can get like one good pregnancy book out of this, I hope. Like that's not just like super weird. Will it ever get published? No one is gonna want to publish a book about a pregnant main character.
You don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. So I have to write it. And that's why I'm having all of these dreams. Although I could certainly use some dreams, little baby, that are not just about pregnancy. Like give me a really good book idea that's not about pregnancy, please.
The strange thing about that, like no one will publish a book where the main character is pregnant. Like there's got to be a certain percentage of women in the country that are pregnant at any given time. It's true. You would think that especially in like pregnant. The third, or like they're in the third trimester, like what do you can't move, you would read or watch TV. So like why is this not
why are pregnant women not a bigger target audience? I don't know.
Exactly.
Maybe they are. Maybe we're an untapped target audience.
Ash, make it happen. You gotta there are pregnant women all over the country.
I
and
do
the world,
have
but
plenty of ideas. Oh my God.
Just saying.
I'll start like a mini publishing house specifically for books for pregnant women, and I'll just hire ghost writers like they do for Cozy Mysteries to just just pump out random pregnancy stories. Ew.
Give them the working title and then write a story that this title fits.
Your assignment is pregnant with alien baby. I need it to be this many words long. Go for it.
Got it. Oh no.
Ooh, wow. So many things could go wrong. But yeah, anyways, that's
you know what's fun?
What?
We are currently passing the Bechdel test. Yay for us.
Ooh, good for us. Let me make us not pass it. My husband is so hot. Oh my gosh. He's so cute and adorable.
Shut up. Now we're not feminists anymore.
Now we're not feminists anymore because I think my husband's hot.
Yeah.
He goes, shut up.
It's like, is he still in pain? He's like, I'm dying over here. I don't care.
He's laying back in his like game chair gaming, but he hasn't moved a muscle since we've been recording. He's got the little heating pad I put on his neck, and he's so stiff and uncomfortable looking.
I haven't moved.
I'm like, you're so hot, and he's like, shut up.
Oh my gosh.
I can't even speak. Oh, he's too funny. Anyways, yeah, I don't like following any rules, so I had to break that we were passing the Bechdel test. I don't want to pass.
Gotta correct that.
Had to correct it, exactly. Because I hate women, obviously.
Obviously, it's the only reason you would do that.
Obviously. That's why I like pregnancy so much. I'm like, women should suffer.
And create life.
Nah, women are badass. I'm like over here, like all this stuff they don't tell you about pregnancy. And I'm like, I just need applause should just follow me all day long is what I currently feel like.
You're doing great.
Good job. And I'm like, I'm going to vomit or go to sleep. One of the two.
Applause.
Excellent work.
Oh,
God. Anyways, I think that's everything I've got for peeps. Do you have anything else you want to share?
No, that's it for me.
All right. Well, if you guys enjoyed this kind of wild episode, or if you hated it, I don't care. Leave us 5 stars. Why not? Or leave us a scathing review of why you think that we hate women as women who support women.
Exactly. And pass the Bechdel test, dang it.
Yeah, at least pass the Bechdel test in your review. Come on, or I don't know if we can take you seriously. But for real, thank you guys for bearing with us through all the chaos. Thank you for listening, for showing up. If you guys have other writer friends, don't forget to share the pod with them because that is the #1 way that podcasts grow. If you guys want to join our writers group, you can do that. You can just go down in the episode description. There's a link to our Discord chat. It's a writers group there, but you guys can also message us on social media. We're on TikTok and Instagram. We are the Scripturient Society. Lots of great content on there. If you guys are not super into social media, I absolutely get it. But I mean, we are pretty on brand. Our Instagram is all like writing tips, writing advice, courtesy of Karissa. TikTok is just really funny videos. If you are a writer, you will relate. And that is nice because sometimes no one can relate to you as a writer. So excellent stuff, all courtesy of Catherine. And if you guys want to send us like a longer message about why we're wrong or crazy, or you guys want to email us and ask us to cover a certain writing topic, we would love to hear from you guys. Or if you just want to chat, you guys can email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com. That's our production company. You can also go to storysirenstudio.com and check out our merch if you want to support the pod. I think that's everything. So until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.